Hello, everyone, and welcome to the High Tech Tea. My name is Vaisa Ghazi, and I am the founder of the High Tech Tea. I want to thank you all for being here and signing up and joining us. And I want to encourage you to let us know that you're here, to let us know in the chat, but also to share with your fellow viewers who you are and what you're doing. Who knows what you can get out of it to connect. The idea has always been that the High Tech Tea is for people to connect and to build their network. So we also want to continue that right now. I'm going to keep it pretty short right now because I actually want to introduce you to two ladies who I have been collaborating with from the Women in Tech organization. I've been working with them to plan this entire event, and it's been wonderful working with them. And they want to explain a little bit about their organization and also this event. Anjana and Rita, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Raisa, for the beautiful introduction. Welcome, everyone, to the High Tech Tea in collaboration with Women in Tech Netherlands. Today, as you know, it's all about female empowerment, and we're going to shine a light on those power ladies who are especially here for you to give advice and share their experiences. I'm Anjana Gahar, Millennial Audience Director of Women in Tech Netherlands, and today I'm with Rita Proda, who is my colleague and Digital Art Director of Women in Tech Netherlands. As you all know, a small percentage of businesses is owned by female founders. From previous reports, it has also been shown that in the Netherlands, a country that scored well on many indicators on gender equality, has still a lack on women in leadership positions. That's why Women in Tech and the High Tech Tea have partnered up today for you to give you the opportunity to see all the possibilities to start your own tech up. Our goal is to get you all warmed up for this so that you're all steady and ready to start your own tech business after this event. So before I'll get into detail about what we have in store for you, I want to give the word to Rita to tell you more about our organization, Women in Tech Netherlands, and what we stand for. Rita, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Anjana. So, Women in Tech is an international nonprofit organization that has two goals. So, the first is to close the gender gap, and the second is to help women to embrace technology. So, Women in Tech fully supports the United Nations Sustainable Development Objectives. If we can have this slide, please. Raisa? This slide, please. So we contribute to 5 of the 17 goals, starting at the very core of them by the 5th, so to achieve gender equality and empower women and girls. We also contribute to other SDGs such as education, science, tech and innovation, entrepreneurialism, and social inclusion. So here is our wonderful Women in Tech Netherlands team. I don't know if we can show the second slide. I don't know if you see it. Let's see if we can get it. So here's the wonderful Women in Tech Netherlands tribe, led by Karen Twan, Elike and Lam, that hold our tribe all together and very unique, and make sure that everybody enjoy the ride. And by being part of the tribe, they keep also empowering each one of us. So with Anjana, that is also part of the tribe, we're really happy to participate to this event with Raisa, the High Tech Tea, to put the spotlight under female entrepreneurs. So let's start.
Thank you, Rita, for the nice introduction. I couldn't have said it better to introduce our tribe. So I want to go through the schedule today with you guys. If it can go on the screen, if possible. Just a second. I think there is a technical problem. Okay, guys. So as you might have seen on the Eventbrite, first we would start off with the interview with Constantijn van Oranje, but we've decided to do a little switch up, and we will start with our panel on female entrepreneurship, followed by our interview with the one and only Constantijn van Oranje with Raisa Ghazi. And then it will be followed by our final panel with the VCs held by our moderator, Rita Prota. And we'll finalize the event with our special guest, Tanya Jatnanand Singh. Then we'll get right to it. I hope you have a delightful afternoon and are ready with your tea. Okay, great. So welcome everybody. We will start with a panel, and we have three amazing women with us who will share their experiences as a female founder and give us all the advice with the knowledge they have. Could we have the speakers on the screen, please? Okay, great. So our first panelist is Eve.
Just a quick question. Is it just me not hearing?
Hi,
Otherwise,
Eve. No, it's not just you. It's also on my end, and I think with Jiha too.
Yeah, on my end as well.
well, let me help Anjana and the rest of the team. Hi, everyone. If you don't mind, on mute. It's echo. And then I'll pass it over to you, ladies, because we're amazing, and let's save the world, all right?
Yeah, sure.
Anjana, thank you so much. High Tech Tea, Women in Tech, for inviting me. I'm Eve, Women in AI Ambassador in the Netherlands, and I am a founder and managing director of Eveness. It's a 3D VR startup. So I am quite involved in various fields, from bridging the gender gap in the industry of AI and technology to entrepreneurship scene. So all the innovative ideas is what I'm passionate about. Thank you for having me here, and I will pass this digital microphone to Anushka.
Thank you for the microphone, Eve. That was a wonderful introduction of yourself. Nice to meet you. So yes, my name is Anushka Sonai, and I'm the president of the Creative Tech Hub Caribbean. It's a company based in Suriname, and we work in Suriname and the rest of the Caribbean. We have a client based in the Netherlands and the USA. But that's more of my formal introduction. I'm born and raised in Suriname, and I believe in a bright future for our country and the Caribbean region. So I have dedicated my life to developing the business ecosystem in a way that we can have a more digital inclusive world, or a more digital inclusive economy in the Caribbean. I love to travel, and I think outside of all these roles that I play, the most amazing role that I play is the one of being a mausi to my nieces and nephew. A mausi is your mother's sister. So that's the most wonderful role that I have. And I will pass on to Wajiha.
Hello, everyone. It's so nice to meet both of you. My name is Wajiha, and I'm 23 years old. I'm from Pakistan, and I'm actually a software engineer. And during the course of my degree, I really wanted to work upon some medical problems and some diseases. So I did various projects on epilepsy, on deafness, and one of the most groundbreaking projects that I did was a smart shapewear for early detection of breast cancer. And this was the project that won several awards on international and national level. And I was able to convert it into a startup. But in 2019, when I graduated, I realized that my calling was in digital marketing and in copywriting. So I changed my career from IT to digital marketing and copywriting. And I have been serving various international clients and two Coma Club members through my agency, Copywriters Plan, in the tech, SaaS, and e-commerce niche ever since. So that's my professional introduction. But I myself love traveling. I love to travel a lot. I love to network with so many people. I used to be very much into the SDG goals of United Nations. I have also worked on a project with Oxfam by Oxford, and my like I was. I introduced the technology to help combat harassment of women in public streets. So that was also one of my very passionate projects that I did. But the only project that I turned into a startup was the one with on breast cancer. Breast cancer is one of the biggest issues women face worldwide, and it's also a very pressing issue in Pakistan. And especially the women in the rural areas, they have no support. They have very poor medical facilities available here. So it was one of the projects that I was really passionate about, and my startup was based on that. So I guess I'm now waiting for Anjana to come back live, and then I guess we'll take it from there.
We do it in improvised way. So we'll give
Okay.
time for the technology to solve its own issues. It's all
Yeah.
about that connection. How about we
Yeah.
have a chat, ladies? Because
Sure.
you impressed me. Amazing stories so far, and like little brief messages. I want to explore more with you. Well, let's start with your stories. So how did you end up in this innovative field and doing what you're doing right now? It's amazing to see women taking the lead and defining the new, course for innovation, whether it's tech, IoT, data, blockchain, AI. So I don't know, maybe Anushka, you would like to share a little bit of your story, how you got to this point?
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, it started a long time ago when I had to decide what I would go to study, and I think it was more because I didn't know what I wanted. I went with what my parents wanted. So they wanted me to become a doctor. And I started the medical studies as well. But after a few years, I knew I couldn't go on with it. So I switched and I started to do electrical engineering. And that's where I built my first app. And I saw that it's very difficult to get people to go and use a new app. And it was 20 years ago. So 20 years when I built my first app, people wouldn't like go and embrace mobile apps or software. Like we didn't have mobile apps back then. We had just normal web apps. And that is what triggered me, because from my home base, I learned from my parents a lot of entrepreneurial things. Like my dad was in the trade commission, so he was doing like business, and my mom, she had this farm, and she was a housewife, but before that she was a nurse. So later she started having like the chicken, and she was planting and selling the vegetables as well, but not as a way of an income, but they used it for helping us to become more, let's say, entrepreneurial. And at that moment, I didn't know it would have this impact. So I'm really grateful now. Like, if you stand back, you can see how it went and what happened all the way. But I think technology offers us very good perspectives. But what you see most of the time, if someone is good in technology, they're not good in business. So they will struggle to make a living from it. And I had both. I was very good with physics and maths, so I could learn programming languages very easy. And after that, applying the business skills to it made me become an entrepreneur in it. So it's more of going with the flow and going with what my own like upbringing had for me. and all the ingredients that were in there, and mix it up and make like a good recipe. And I think that is one of the things that has also empowered me or encouraged me to create my businesses around these, let's say, challenges. And if you look at my businesses, you will see that every business is addressing a challenge in the digital entrepreneurship ecosystem. So that's how it went. I think Wajiha has also a similar great story to share with us.
Can't wait to
Yeah,
hear. Thank you.
yeah. So I do have a quite a similar story as you. So I did not. I'm a software engineer, but I did not want to be a software engineer. But because of parents, I got into engineering. But I did not have any background in tech when I first got into software engineering. And as soon as I started studying software engineering, I realized that technology can solve so many problems that we face on a daily basis, right? It can not only solve the issues, some of the medical issues, but like day-to-day common problems we face as humans, right? So I was very much intrigued about how I can use technology to solve some of the biggest problems that especially women face in the world. So I remember, like, I was never into studying, I was never into getting good grades. I just wanted to figure out a way to implement what I was studying, and I saw myself gravitating towards hardware development and wearable tech more. So I remember, like, one of the first projects I did, I developed a wearable bracelet for the deaf people, so that when they are walking on streets and like there's a car approaching them, so they can be alerted that if they are in danger nearby and they cannot hear that they are in danger. So I remember I made a wearable bracelet as one of my first projects for vibrating wearable bracelets for the deaf people. And that's when I realized that using technology, I can bring actual change in people's lives. And I continued working on similar projects that, like, the goal of which was to help people live better lives and provide them solutions to problems that people suffer a lot from, especially in Pakistan. We do not have a lot of resources, especially the women in rural areas, the people in rural areas, they are living a very backwards life. And I had this vision to provide them with a technology that is not only portable but also easily accessible. So I worked on different projects. I took my projects to various hackathons where I would test them out. I would build their prototypes using various hardwares that were available at that time, such as Raspberry Pi, Arduino, and other such hardwares. And I was just building stuff, and I was prototyping, and I was testing out all these ideas that I had in my mind. But as you said, most people, they are either good at technology, but they are not good at business, right? So this is a huge gap that which people need to cover. I was suffering from the same thing. Like, I was good at business. Sorry, I was good at technology. I was building stuff, but I did not know how to sell my idea or how to actually get it out to the masses. And that's when I started getting into digital marketing and learning more about, digital marketing is the latest way you can, promote any business these days, no matter what your idea is. So I started learning more about digital marketing and what it does and how it helps businesses grow while I was a student. So after like after summer 2016, I also I was also learning about it, and I was also getting into copywriting as well, because copywriting is very much related to how you. It's very much related to buyer psychology and understanding how to study people and how to sell to them, right? So, I was working in tech, and side by side, I was working in copywriting. And once I graduated, I realized that yes, I have the skills to develop something in as a tech project, but I also need to shape my skills as a businesswoman even more. And even today, this is some of my one of my biggest goals, to learn how to sell and to figure out how to market to the world and how to psychologically understand the target audience that we want to target to. And because I believe that no matter how good your idea is, if you don't understand your target audience and if you don't understand their true needs and pains, you cannot sell whatever your product is. So I shifted my career from IT to digital marketing and copywriting, where I am learning how to sell more. And that is my goal. Like, I do intend to go get back into IT somewhere in the future and use my skills as a businesswoman to succeed in IT as well.
Thank you, Vajia and Anushka, for sharing your stories. I think we need to check with the studio. Are you ladies back on live? Are you live now? Anjana, would you like to? take over the questions? Speakers in this call, let's try to mute ourselves. It's hard to hear them. One, two, three, one more try, and then we'll continue as we were discussing. No, right. So then I would propose just a friendly business ladies talk. I ask my question. Sound? No. Maybe Anushka, it's your turn to ask a question to all of us. How about that?
Yeah, I know that when Anjana and Raisa were putting up this event, we had this call, and one of the things that they really want to pass on to everyone who is watching us today was the entrepreneurial aspects of being a woman in technology. And like both of you just said, being an entrepreneur, it just came to you, and how you saw an opportunity and worked on that. I think one of the things that Anjana asked me in that talk was if I have a metaphor. And I'm not sure if you guys have one. And I'll share mine, and then I'll ask you both to share yours as well. So I remember telling her that I use the metaphor that entrepreneurship is like being on a roller coaster. And it looks fun, it looks amazing, daunting and everything. But once you're in your ride, in your seat, and you take off, you just take off. There is no turning back or stepping out halfway. So you go in. And there are some steep, let's say steep parts, and there are parts where you even hang upside down. And it's sometimes also scary. But most of the time, it's fun. You can like live yourself, and you can be like free, and like that part where you can let your hands loose and yell it out. I think that is my perfect metaphor for how I experience being an entrepreneur. And I know I have had these roller coasters where I never went on, but the ones that I have stepped on, those were the ones where I always have a good feeling about it. So Eve, how's yours? I'm so excited to know.
Right. I will share my favorite quote. It's in the signature in one of my email accounts. I have many, as you can imagine. So William Faulkner said, if the story is in you, it has to come out. And that's what happens with a lot of talented people, whether they're business or tech focused. We are building the stories every day. We are innovating our brains. We are coming up with the technology or solutions or a new society kind of forms of interaction. But for many of us, unfortunately, the story stays inside and it never finds surface. So for me, entrepreneurship is actually that state of being able to dare to say, you know what? I don't know what it takes me. I better learn how to make my idea a reality, but I'll take every step and I commit to and dedicate my time to make it happen, because I believe in creating impact and helping people or helping planet or helping businesses and making it more circular and more friendly for all of us. So that first step of sharing the story, sharing your idea, or even asking questions. When you have a story, you try to challenge it. Is it a good one? Do people really need it? How do I test it in the market without even having a prototype yet? So that's the step I find very important for entrepreneurship. And for me, it's been probably part of my nature, being too much curious and there. And then if my experiment fails, at least I tried. If it succeeds, well, yes, nailed it. So, Ajiha, what about you? What are your thoughts on that?
My favorite metaphor is like entrepreneurship is really like a spiral staircase, with a straight staircase, you can see the top.
What are your thoughts on that?
We can hear them now.
My favorite metaphor is like entrepreneurship is really like the spiral staircase, with a straight staircase, you can see the top.
What are your thoughts on that?
We can hear my favorite metaphor is like really like the spiral staircase, with a straight staircase, you can see the top.
Is it possible to mute the studio?
No, we don't have the rights to mute the studio, but I think they're silent now. I think Wajiha, you can pick up again, like you were saying, your favorite metaphor was, and
Yeah.
then you can pick up
Yes.
from there, please.
Okay, yeah. So I was talking about my favorite metaphor. For me, entrepreneurship is really like a spiral staircase. With a straight staircase, you can see the top, and you can also see the steps. You can predict how many steps you need to take to reach the top. But that's not the case with the spiral staircase. You don't know where the top is, and you don't know how many steps you need to take to reach your end goal, right? So you don't know what you don't know as an entrepreneur, right? So you can only figure out the next steps once you have treaded the first few steps, right? The next steps are only visible once you have climbed a little bit, and then you can figure out the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. So like entrepreneurship is very, very unpredictable, and this is what I can relate to the most, that we don't know what we don't know, and we have to figure out so many stuff along the way, and it's just highly unpredictable, and it's not for the weak-hearted, right? You have to have the strength to be able to tread that journey, which you have no clue about, right? It's just like walking in a dark tunnel with no end in sight, and you don't know if you will succeed or if you don't know if you will fail, but you need to trust yourself enough. Like, this is one of the things I keep telling myself, that I don't know what steps I need to take at this level or this level, but I do know what steps I need to take at the very next level, right? So it's very scary. It can overwhelm you a lot sometimes, but you need to keep believing in yourself, and you need to keep trusting yourself. And entrepreneurship does throw a lot of problems at you and a lot of challenges at you, which you need to address from a logical point of view. Like, you cannot let yourself get highly emotional in your business. You cannot let emotions take control of what you are trying to do, because if you get emotional, you will start crying at one level or another. So you have to stay logical. You have to stay very, very rational, and then you can slowly figure out one step and the other and the other. And if you manage to figure out all those steps correctly, you will eventually reach the top.
Yeah, I like how you just put out the steps for if you are thinking to become
hear
an
me
entrepreneur,
again?
what are the skills that we need.
Yeah.
And I think we have the studio back. So everyone,
Okay,
I will
great.
hand over to Anjana.
Okay, thank you, Anushka, so much for the patience. And thank you for the conversation. We could hear everything in the studio. And it was great to hear that you get along and kept our audience busy. So as you all know, as an entrepreneur, you get a lot of ideas, what G has said. But as you begin a business, you get involved with many aspects of the business, just like you started with digital marketing. So how do you approach such a situation that you have to get out of your comfort zone?
Sorry, is that the question for me?
For Eve, please. Sorry.
So how do I get out from the situations? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Right. So basically, it's in the state of confusion when you need to understand how to proceed, and if there's becoming too stressful or too unknown. My favorite, actually, way forward, the way around it, is to give a call to all the people in my network and ask the right people who could support with some knowledge and some ideas how to change it, how to pivot, how to make an ideas more sustainable, stable. And that always helped. Can call all these wonderful community organizations, my sisters from Women in Tech, for example, or High Tech Tea with Raisa, or I can call the industry professionals or commercial leads, and then you can find an answer. That would be my solution. Ajay, what about you?
Okay, so for me, whenever I get stuck somewhere, I believe that there are so many amazing communities available online that are ready to help you right away. For example, I have joined so many communities on Reddit and some other forums like Stack Overflow, and whenever I'm facing a problem, I can just go there and I present my problem, and I get a lot of solutions in less than a day. So that's my first way, like the first and foremost thing that I do to get out of that problem. But again, I believe like we're living in an age where it's very easy to get rid of those uncomfortable situations we often get in. We have technology right at our fingertips, and with Google, with YouTube, we can find the solution to almost any problem we face, right? So I trust technology, I trust the resources and tools we have today, and I know that no matter what problem I face, there's a solution out there, and there's somebody who has already put the solution online, right? So, and I also am not afraid to invest in myself either. Like some solutions or some skill set you can find online easily, but you need to invest in some courses, you need to invest in some workshops and some trainings to figure out some other parts of business and entrepreneurship, right? And I'm not afraid to invest in myself and to figure out those unknown parts by accessing those content that needs to be accessed through some investments. I'm not afraid to do that. But at the same time, I also believe that those uncomfortable situations we get in, they are the ones that help us grow the most. One of my favorite quotes is to seek discomfort, and I'm not afraid to seek discomfort in my business. Like I intentionally try to seek discomfort from time to time, because that's when I grow the most, not even as a person but also in my business. Like my business grows the most when I'm facing a difficult situation there, so I'm not afraid of them.
Thank you. And Anushka,
Thank you, Jiha.
We continue.
Anushka?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Like it's almost similar like what Eve and what Jiha mentioned. Having a good support system is very important, especially if you're a woman and you're in the technology field, because it's usually lonely out there. But if you have a good support system, it's not. So the support system, like your parents, your friends, your business partners, your women in tech, like your tribe, everyone they will support you. But most of all, it's also about your self-consciousness. When you're an entrepreneur, you have to have healthy habits. And one of my best habits is I love reading. So I read a lot. Like what Jiha mentioned, she uses technology. I love to read about things, but if I'm in a situation that makes me uncomfortable, I try to think about what is exactly making me uncomfortable. Is it the person? Is it the situation? Is it new? But I also know that this is my growing stepping stone. If I will go further, I will grow and I will come out like much better. But building up the confidence to know that you will come out of it, that's very important. That you have the confidence and you trust your own instincts. And I'm a spiritual person, so I've been in spirituality for my whole life. So I also trust my instincts, but also what the cosmos will bring to me. My answers will come to me. So, and yes, sometimes I just take a step back, because it's also important to take a step back. It's not let's say negative to say that I'm taking a step back, I'll think it over and I'll try again, or I'll do it when I feel comfortable about it. But the fact is, outside your comfort zone, you're never comfortable. So you just have to go through it and make your comfort zone bigger. So that's how I deal with this.
Thank you, Anushka, for sharing. And you told me one of your good habits are, for example, reading a book. Would you maybe share with our audience what kind of books would you recommend to them?
Wow, I don't know where to begin, but if you're if you want to be an entrepreneur and you want to prepare or start a business and that will keep you in business or will help you to earn something for the coming years, I think you should look into all books written about strategic foresight, because I'm very future driven, and if I start like a business, I will look in how will this, what are the implications in a changing world, and how will this business be after 5 years, 10 years, what will be my opportunities, what are my challenges there. Also books about spirituality, because spirituality doesn't tell you how you go from A to B, but it tells you how you have to enjoy the journey where you're on, and how you keep your sanity. I don't know how it's pronounced, but
Sanity, yeah.
sanity. Yeah, how you keep saying in amidst all this chaos, and how amidst all the chaos you stay focused, because that's very important. I love books from Sri Ravi Shankar, so if you can find your hand. Also, positive mindsets. Louise Hay, I like that. Good to Great, The Art of War.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are many. I cannot just mention a few. I've read many books.
I could use some mindfulness right now with the technical problems, but thank you for sharing your recommendation. To Anushka and Eve, you both have had some experience within the business. I think, Anushka, you told us previously in our conversation that you're already 20 years in this business. So what do you two think would be the most important things when you start with your own business? Eve, could you maybe begin?
Well, when you start your own business, you usually start with coming up with this idea. It just bring cha-ching in your head, and you're like, oh, wow, I never thought about it. But then you need to build a team, because not necessarily you can do everything. And you need to explore the, how do you build the business concept? How do you nail it down that it makes sense? How you make it lean? Because again, you need to prioritize and focus. So then it just becomes a phased journey where every phase needs to have KPIs and goals, and also growing your network is very important, because there you can find those passionate people, knowledgeable people who can join you as co-founders or experts. Like, for example, Gabi Slizak, who is my business partner, we met during Women in AI projects. Last year, there was Way Accelerate program for female entrepreneurs, and Gabi is a VR ambassador at Women in AI. But because of our passion for virtual reality, we just had this click, and she's a pioneer for many, many years in that field. I am a business mind, growth innovations consultant. So that's how you start, by finding the right people who you can trust in the way of trusting, and trusting their knowledge and expertise, and merging into passion together. Maybe Anushka wants to continue, build on this.
Do you have something to add, Anushka?
Yes, sure. So if you have the ID, like IDs are cheap if you don't execute it, like Eve just mentioned. But what I do when I have an ID, and I think that has worked very best after for a few years now, for most of the years then, is I think about it elaborately from all different angles. I will go and think about that ID, like how will this roll out? And thinking is what I do best. So besides reading, thinking is another thing. I take time to think about my business. I have this board with all these things I'm working on it, on Post-its. So it's very busy and colorful because I'm thinking about a lot of things. And I just take a step back and look at my board and think at how is each thing connected and what is the best way to go about it. But when I think about things, I have to force myself to do this because I'm not, it doesn't come naturally to me. But then I create a pitch deck. That's 10 slides. There is a template, you can just Google it, how you can create a pitch deck for investors. Because if you can sell it to someone who will give you money for your ID, then your ID is pretty good. because everyone will think twice, thrice before they invest their money in you. So you create a pitch deck for an investor, and you don't have to pitch it to an investor, but if you write it as something for an investor, you will have all the important ingredients in it. And then you play your own devil's advocate. You come up with all the ideas you can think about why this will not work. And I can promise you will come up with many ideas why your idea is not a good idea. Many reasons, you will find many reasons. And when you have like smashed your whole idea and broke it off, you just go ahead and build it up again, step by step. Each stone, bring it back together and build your whole idea into a business model or a way of how you will go about it. And then you step away from it again and look at it and see if it's something that you want to do. And this may look like a lengthy process, but to tell you the truth, some of my ideas, I've rolled them out in a day or so, or less than a day, because it's already in line with what I do. So if you're starting up new, take your time for it. And if you do it frequently, you will become very comfortable doing it.
Thank you, Anushka, for sharing your story. As you told us, you get many ideas. And I think Wajiha, you also had a great idea during your studies, but it doesn't always work out as you want to. How did you cope with such a situation, and what did you learn about it? Would you do something differently if you had the chance to?
Yeah, okay. So my idea, we were working on a very complex medical technology. Like the biggest challenge we faced was like we were just a group of three software engineers trying to solve breast cancer, right? So the biggest challenge we faced was bridging the gap between our technical knowledge and the lack of medical knowledge that we had. So that was one of the biggest challenges we faced. And even though we tried building a minimum viable product, we built multiple prototypes. We quickly realized how hard it was going to be because especially in my industry that I was working in, it's very hard to test out such an idea. But maybe if you're working in another industry, I always suggest that please build your minimum viable product, find the cheapest way to build your prototype, because yes, you can sit and write down all the flaws that it has. You can do comparative research to determine market weaknesses, but unless you have a prototype with you, nothing else can tell you about the weaknesses in your own idea as well as your prototype can. So make sure you have a minimum viable product ready and then test it out with your customers and get feedback on it from not just your customers but all the stakeholders involved. And then you will be able to fully judge whether your idea is good enough and ready for the market or not. But for us, like we built multiple prototypes and we quickly realized that it's not going to be an easy journey. We need at least 6 to 7 years of research at the back end to make our idea a reality and make that product available to all the women around the globe. So our prototype really helped us. But another challenge we faced was, in my industry at least, you need approval. You need approval from hospitals. You need approval from your medical authorities to conduct such experiments. Like I cannot walk up to a breast cancer patient and ask her to test out the product for me, right? We need serious approval. So that was another roadblock we faced. And like the way I tried handling with them was, I first tried getting a lot of surgeons and doctors on board with me, and I tried getting them in my team. But then again, there was this problem of doctors not having enough technical knowledge, and we software engineers did not have enough medical knowledge. So there was a huge lack of right communication, and that's one of the reasons my startup failed. But I believe that if you are working in such an industry, you should have the right skill set available in your team, and then you should also have the product ready, or at least the first prototype ready, which you can go and test out in the market, because only then you will come up with so many new challenges which you weren't aware of before, because real world is very different from theoretical world, right? So always test out what you want to bring out in the world, and it will present you with a lot of new problems and solutions to them as well.
Thank you, Wajiha, for sharing your experience. Eve, have you ever experienced in your entrepreneurial journey that it didn't work out as it was supposed to do?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think I've been on the path to become an entrepreneur for Yeah, about 15 years. So only during the last 2 years it started making sense. But I've tried, I explored, I built, and it failed, or it never launched, hasn't been launching for the previous ideas. Now, during the last 2 years, I've been working on, well, even as you know, it's official, it's launched. Then I was supporting various entrepreneurs in their journey for deep tech startups. And I'm working on something as an outcome from Way Accelerate. But then, what stops usually? Founders like us, the ones who are starting, you need funds, and it's very hard to get without showing how customers love it, how users use it every day, without any market testing. But to do the market testing, you need to build something, right? To not even MVP, but some basic presentation and test it with a few people, at least like hundreds of them. So to do that, if you are serious, you actually need some guarantee that if you start talking about it, the idea doesn't vanish and become the idea of somebody else. That comes with IP rights registration. It comes with Chamber of Commerce registration. It costs on average 20K to start with. And then you continue with your IP rights expansions and so on. 20K, not necessarily everyone has in the pocket, especially if you're a student or graduate. Therefore, I think it's very important also for the world to reconsider the ways we support our early stage entrepreneurs. Because if you give this little push, little funding, little support, and as I saw a message, I think it was from Kari, who said, you need to start with believing in yourself. That's actually what becomes as a result. The person starts believing in themselves and be very active in pushing it forward. I have one great idea. You won't believe it, but it's stuck just for that little funding, which is not 20K, but more. But hopefully, we can get to that point by working all together. And again, network brings a lot of opportunities.
Yes,
the time is
thank
right,
you,
then
Eve.
it works. Welcome.
One question that I had, you recently started a virtual platform, if I'm not wrong, which is a success. But how do you know, how do you identify business opportunities, and what metrics do you use to validate them? Because it was obvious that you needed a virtual platform, of course, because of the whole COVID situation. So do you have a method for that, or that you maybe want to share with us?
I think I need to unmute myself if the question is to me. Yeah. Right, so validation comes. So first of all, Evenus doesn't have a platform of our own. We work with hundreds of platforms, various VR platforms, web-based, prime focus, because we're done with downloading and losing users at the big events like this one. So the validation procedure is actually you need to understand the need in the market and the demand, and also the starting costs, what is needed to build it, and how can you partner with the right organizations to minimize your costs and maximize your impact and value. We started slow, less marketing. Okay, we can invest, of course, in all the Google advertising and pay a tremendous amount of money, but it's not needed if you know the principles also of growth hacking, how it works. So step by step, client by client, impression by impression, and wow after wow, that's what starts generating the results. Therefore, I would say for more serious businesses, it's a different dimension when you have your own product and you have your own roadmap. You build a roadmap to see at each phase when you go viable, or let's say how many years it will take, and profitable. And for many businesses, you need to have investors. With Evenus, we don't. But then knowing what the customers needs, what are their business and people needs, and how can we ensure that superior excellence of experience, then it becomes our kind of measurable points with a lot of data attached to that, every single step of the user journey.
Thank you, Eve, for your answer. Eve and Anushka, you have been in the business for a very long time. And I might wonder that you have experienced some uncomfortable situation as a woman, or maybe because you have a different cultural background. Anushka, you are co-founder of 4 companies. What are your milestones to help and develop a stable company which is work-friendly for your employees? Anushka?
Yes, thank you. Well, a work-friendly or a friendly workplace starts with friendly people, but also creating your environment for the people who work there. I think Eve just mentioned customer experience, and so did Wajiha. But one of the most important things for an entrepreneur to work on is your workers' experience, your employees, the experience of your employees. And I think there are a lot of quotes about this, but that is something that I think if your people are feeling good, they're feeling, let's say, erkend. What's erkend in English? If they're feeling valued, they will do their best job and offer best service, and so will your customers also be happy. You have to work on your customer experience as well, of course. And I think 3 things are important in a business: your customer intimacy, product leadership, and your operational excellence. So those 3 things are important, but I think for me a milestone is the Learn, Work, Grow program that we have done with our company. People can, because it's technology and you don't have educations that prepare you for the job, it's just more theoretically, and when you enter the job market, there is a big gap between what you have learned in school and what the company wants. We educate our own people, and we have opened that up, and we started the Learn, Work, Grow program in 2014, where we educate young people in digital jobs, so they become digital marketeers, virtual assistants, social media editors, web developer, etc., etc. And then they have work for 3 years, because also even if you have your certificates, you have knowledge, if you don't have work experience, you don't get a job. So we give you 4 companies where you can work, so you have your work experience, and then you can go and work in a larger company, or you can start your own business. But when we, in order for this Learn, Work, Grow program to be successful, we needed to have a different kind of environment, and I think that helped us to create an environment that is open, safe for women, for young people, for early starters, and for everyone, even for people with a disability, because we were so accepting of people instead of being judgmental and judging others. So that I see as a milestone for us. It's very rare in Suriname. I don't know how it is in the rest of the world. I haven't seen many companies like this, but I have seen some in Europe and in the USA. I haven't been to the East yet, so I don't know how it is in India and Pakistan and all those countries. But that I consider something, because it takes a big courage, because all my other, let's say, entrepreneur colleagues, people who have businesses, they will tell you, you're crazy to do this. Who is doing this? No one, because you're actually educating your own competitor, and you shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't share so much. But I have proved them all wrong. So I did this with my team, and I think if more people will replicate this, our youth and women will have a better future.
Thank you, Anushka. Eve, do you have something to add to that?
Yes, I would like to recommend the book to everyone in the audience, and especially Anushka, who reads a lot of books, as I understood, which is great. So, Accessibility for Everyone by Laura Kalbach. For me, maybe I haven't mentioned it with my startup founder adventure, but when we build technology, and that's what I also preach in Women in AI, it needs to be inclusive and accessible by design. That means your data sets are cleaned from biases as much as possible. It's not possible to clean everything from them, but at least minimize the obvious biases. Algorithms as well, plus to it the design functionality of the solutions, with understanding that it's not only men or women gender split, but they're also gender non-conforming individuals. There are also people who have superpowers, as I call them, because here and there they're different in the way they approach things, or think about things, or digest information, or mobility-wise as well. So all these aspects are very, very much important. And culture-wise, it also inclusive and accessible by design, what Anushka said, right? Because it needs to engage, it needs to create that believe in your own powers, that you can bring your knowledge and passion and create impact all together with your teammates and by yourself. So these two things I find very important for our society. You see how the last 2 years been. What we lack and what we are talking about every day actually is respect to one another. And we can achieve it by very respectful form of technology, but also respect that we give to, in our social connections. When we don't judge, we don't expect and say, you need to do this and that, because in my understanding, that's how the world is built. But be open, and as Anushka said, travel a lot will help. So yes, let's pray we can travel soon a lot.
Thank you, Eve, for sharing also the book recommendations. So I want to wrap up this panel with our last question. What kind of advice do you have for our college graduates, or anyone actually wants to have their own startup and start their journey as entrepreneur? Maybe Wajiha, you could start.
Yeah, so my number one advice for young college graduates would be that don't be afraid to take risks. I truly believe that the sooner you take risks, the more it pays off later in life. So if you are younger, that's like the best time to take risks. So don't be afraid to take risks, and don't be afraid to take a path that is different from the normal people or the majority, right? So when I got started, when I graduated, I took a completely different path from my fellow students, right? And everyone was telling me, "Hey, what are you doing? Why are you going? Why are you pursuing your own business? You just graduated. You need to have a stable job and a stable income." But I knew that this is the best time for me to take risks, and I jumped into my business. And this is the advice I tell everyone. Don't be afraid to take risks and think outside the box. And if you have a good idea, don't just sit on it. People are afraid, like they have a good idea and they're afraid to share it to the world. They're afraid to test it out because they believe that it will be stolen, right? So do not sit on your ideas, test them out as soon as possible, figure out a way to get it out in the world, and figure out a way to implement it, right? And execute that idea, and figure out what your inner calling is, right? Because I truly believe at the end of the day, entrepreneurship is way more spiritual than we think it actually is. We try to fulfill our own inner calling through entrepreneurship. At least that's how it is for me. I fulfill my inner calling and my true purpose in life, and entrepreneurship helps me through that. So my biggest advice is take risks and don't be afraid to try as many new things as possible. And also don't just rely on formal education. Yes, formal education is good. It's good to get a master's degree or bachelor's degree, but nothing beats self-education. I truly believe in self-education. Don't be afraid to invest in your own education. And just because you graduated as an engineer or a doctor, doesn't mean that you cannot succeed as an entrepreneur. There are so many resources available out there in the world that you can literally learn everything from your computer and from your mobile today. And so just invest in yourself, invest in your own knowledge, and have a learning attitude. I just believe that all the entrepreneurs, they are entrepreneurs because they are curious by nature. So you can learn how to be curious as well. And once you're curious, you can then test out your ideas right after graduating, and you can take your business or your idea to the next level and succeed with it.
Thank you, Wajiha, for your answer. It was very insightful. Then, on this note, I would like to end this panel, and thank you, ladies, for joining me with this panel. Then I'll see you next time. I hope you enjoy the rest of our evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Thank you,
having
Anjana.
us.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
As you noticed, we were having some technical issues, and we just want to give compliments to our speakers who picked it up really well. If you want to know how to be a boss woman, you could just take a look at them. When we were having issues, they easily took over. Eve, you were amazing. Vajiha and Anushka, thank you so much. Our dear Anjana is really relaxing right now because she's had a tough 45 minutes. But before we start going to our next section, I would like to also thank our audience for participating so much. It really makes us feel like we're not alone. So many encouraging words. And yeah, it really is so nice to read. Keep sharing with each other. Keep letting us know what you're doing and what you think of our live stream. And then I would also like to introduce to you our next section, which is the interview with Constantijn. And Constantijn van Oranje is actually someone really special in the Netherlands. We're going to let you watch in a little bit what he actually does. And he's going to talk about why now is the time for female founders in tech. Let's go. Hello, everyone. My name is Raisa Ghazi, and I'm the founder of the High Tech Team. Today, I'm interviewing Mr. Constantijn van Oranje on the need for more equality in the sector of technology. I'm also asking him some questions about his own journey in reducing bias. You might know him as the Prince of the Netherlands, but in technology in the Netherlands, we actually know him as a big influence in the startup scene and a supporter of gender equality in technology. Hi, is it okay if I say Constantijn?
Yeah, that's fine. Yes.
Perfect. Okay, well, welcome, Constantijn, and thank you for being here today.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So I would like to start off by asking you, how did you get involved in the technology sector?
Well, I was the chief of staff of Nelly Kroes, and she was heading the digital agenda. And so we were looking at how Europe would transform to a digital continent, and then very rapidly you bump into startups and actually the entrepreneurs that are driving the change. So that's how we got engaged, basically.
Okay. And your journey in gender equality in technology, how did that get started?
I don't know if it's a journey. I always thought, when I led all the teams that I led and I worked with, always were very gender diverse. So I never had a problem kind of hiring very high quality women and different backgrounds. But I actually got involved because I think it was the Next Women conference, and I was supposed to speak there, and I challenged people in the room, say, if there's anything you want, now is your time to pitch. And actually, no one said anything. And then finally, Eline Leijten stood up from Plugify at the time, and she said, "I want to have a cup of coffee with you." So I said, "Okay." So I went off stage and we had a cup of coffee, and she said, "Well, what can we do to improve the role of women in tech, and especially the venture capital situation?" So we said, "Well, let's bring a few people together and start, think about how we're going to do this." And from that event, it took a while, but we developed Fundright, which is a collaboration of now, I think, 45 venture capital firms that commit to more diversity in tech.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And so, has there been an event where you noticed that there was more male privilege in this sector?
Oh, which event is not? I think a lot has changed in the last few years. I mean, it's not done anymore to have all male panel and these kind of things. Actually, one of the first things I did, I just committed to not be on all male panels anymore. It's very simple. Everybody can do it. And now you see, for instance, the European Commission committing to having 50% always. And so things are evolving. But I think what is particularly important is this kind of unconscious bias. We don't know. I mean, once you start seeing, you cannot unsee, and then you start realizing how subtle the biases actually are.
Okay, cool. And did you ever get a realization of some of the privileges that you experienced as a man in this sector?
No, in a sense, I'm not in the sector. I mean, I haven't been working for a tech company myself, and so where I was working before, it was with Nelly Kroes, my boss was a woman, and actually her whole team were male. And then when I took over, we kind of turned it around and it was mostly female. But it was not really an issue. It was actually more embarrassing for her at the time that just her whole team turned out to be male. And even though she's a big, very emancipated, feminist, and it just turned out the way. And that's what people said, we're doing tech, so there's so many more men. But it's true, there are more men, but it doesn't mean that there are not enough women, to fill these kind of jobs. And you have to look harder, be more involved in networks. And I did also realize every day that there are biases that you're basically not aware of. And it's a question of learning and just being open to others, and not only the gender bias, but it's there are so many biases also to other minorities, and if you are in a homogenous culture, then it's even more difficult to see that you have these biases. So business.
Yeah. Okay. And so, apart from just the people who work at a company, what about female founders? Why do you think it's important that there's more female founders in technology for the ecosystem?
Well, I think well, you can't generalize. It's not that a female founder brings something completely different than a male founder, but on the whole, they do have probably different interests. Many companies or startups emerge out of some pain, some annoyance, and for instance, a male, the whole femtech industry wouldn't exist because male founders just don't care about female problems, and these are things that women care about, and so they build businesses that can create a whole sector that wouldn't exist otherwise. So that's important. Two, I think what we've seen is that men, when they're running companies, for instance, they test and do all kinds of things. Also, develop algorithms that are biased towards male situation. So, if you want to break through that, the easiest way is to have more women in tech, or more women, building companies, instead of trying to get these men to become more open. Obviously, you have to do that too, but the more women you have that build these companies, the higher chances that you'll get kind of successful companies serving that customer base.
Yeah. So you believe that there will be more inclusive products as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, and they will, and the products will be better geared towards women. I mean, there's this horrible statistics about how products, even medication, are tested on men, and really have different effects on women, and that's something we should overcome. Yeah.
And so a very small amount of tech startups are owned by women, and they might be watching today as well. What message would you like to give those women who have a brilliant tech idea but they haven't started yet?
Well, I don't know what they say, how much is sweat, and I think 90% or 95% is sweat. An idea is nothing. And I get so many people that throw ideas at me and say, "Look at this wonderful idea," and I say, "Well, okay, what do you want me to do with it? Go, make a plan, validate your idea, go and build it." A plan is a fallacy that you are, or an idea is a fallacy that you are an entrepreneur. I think it's the true entrepreneur starts, and that's the hardest part. So starts, you build something, you start to test it, and then you grow it. And actually, we're doing a podcast called Scale Lab, and we're talking to many entrepreneurs. And it's amazing how all these entrepreneurs actually started and validated their business.
Yeah.
And it's hard, but that's it's getting out there, testing it, finding your customer base, and don't trust that your brilliant idea or your brilliant technology will actually drive the business.
Okay. So the advice is actually to just get started and test and validate your idea, rather than waiting for someone else to pick it up.
Yeah, and get good advisors. So many people try it on their own, whereas there are many people there that have actually done it before, and I just see the difference between entrepreneurs that get good advisors really early on, that help them in how to finance their business, how to plan, how to do your HR, all these things. You as an entrepreneur, you have to think about so many things, especially now where these businesses are growing. Within a matter of 3-4 years, some of these businesses are multiple million euro businesses. And you have to. You're growing at 40, 50, sometimes 100%. It's difficult, and so get all the advice that you can. Don't be too pig-headed and stubborn.
Okay, so also get the right advisors to advise you on how to execute your idea. And so, if you could recommend to anyone watching what they could do to reduce the bias in themselves, what advice would you give them based on your own experience?
Surround you with people that are have different backgrounds. Query them. I think curiosity is probably the most important. You be curious in in each other's backgrounds, and you find actually what I found, which was an eye opener for me, that in my team someone from Limburg had the same problems as someone from Suriname. Because they were both trying to hide their accents, and they were not using certain, certain words and language. Because even if you're from Limburg, you don't want to be seen in Amsterdam. You don't want to be seen as from the south. Yeah. So in their professional context, they had learned to speak a different language, so they were hiding their identities, and that was an eye opener. And another thing is that we tend to ask more of our staff nowadays. We want them to bring a lot of their personal skills and interest to work, to the company. That also means that you have to be aware of that they also bring much more background, and that background is diverse, and that you need to understand better where they come from. So the obvious example is the vrijmibo, which is, everybody kind of drinking. It's always with drinking in the Netherlands, and then and you have, so if you have pork, sausages, and you drink beer, and then you think it's funny, peculiar why your Muslim colleague maybe is not that, connected to the social fabric of the firm. And that's an easy one, obviously, but you'll be amazed how, or you're probably not amazed because you know these stories, but how few companies are even aware of those kind of very basic things.
Yeah, true. Yeah, so apart from women, there's also a lack of biculturals in technology. And by bicultural, I mean someone who has a background or another culture in their life, like Sudanese or Moroccan. And so what advice do you have for this group? Why should they get involved in technology?
I don't know why they should get involved. I think a lot of jobs are being created. So if you want to be in tech, if you want to do new things, then this is the sector you want to be in. Obviously, if you're more into food, you maybe don't want to be in tech. But there's obviously food and tech. I think that the top line would be, these are where the new jobs are going to be. So every job is going to be tech in some way or other. So you better get in there. The second thing I would say is that actually tech is very international. So the diversity is there, but it's maybe less kind of Moroccan, Surinamese, in the Dutch tech scene. But my team, I have an Australian, I've a Slovenian, I have American. I mean, anything goes in tech, and people travel. So Amsterdam is a magnet for many different people, and they go here because the opportunities are here. So if you want to be in a more diverse environment, for instance, if you go to a notary firm in the Netherlands, probably it's going to be pretty white and Dutch. Whereas if you're in tech, usually it's especially if you're in a bit more far out things like in crypto and others, you'll find that there's kind of there's a very international scene. So if you were looking for that, then tech is definitely your sector.
Okay, so, and I have my final question for you. I know we also have some viewers from Suriname, where there's also a lot of development in the technology sector coming up right now. What would you like to say to them?
Go for it. The best thing about tech is that it can emerge from anywhere. So everything is in the cloud. Capital flows basically all across the world. So if you have a good idea, and a good execution, it can go from anywhere. I saw once, just a few years ago, an article on, it was I think it's called Tech Gaza, and I thought, gee, if you can start, if you have an incubator, an accelerator in Gaza for young Palestinians, under those circumstances, and they are actually developing companies, you can really develop companies everywhere. And there's no prerogative. Actually, in the Netherlands, a lot of our legacy is holding us back. So we have much more to lose than in many spots of the world where people are just thinking up new ideas and going for it. So my argument would be, go for it, and follow follow where the talent is. So maybe at a certain point you outgrow Suriname, and you can keep part of your business in Suriname, but go and explore the world.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so advice from Constantine is to go for it and to try to expand as much as you can. Well, Constantine, thank you so much for this interview. I thought it was very insightful, and we hope that you can also be a viewer on during our High Tech Tea, and we would like to see you again sometime.
Very happy to come back when there's tea.
Hopefully next time.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the interview with Constantijn van Oranje. Let us know what you think about it in the comments. Next, we have our second panel with our lovely moderator, Rita Prata from Women in Tech. The title is Give Me Your Money, a guide to successfully pitching your at VCs. Rita, the floor is yours.
Okay, so we're back with our wonderful speakers for this last panel. So let's see, can you all hear me? Lena, Asta?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
So I think Ruben is connecting his camera. So yeah, during this panel, we will talk about how successfully pitch your project to VCs and investors, but also the ongoing challenge of gender inequality within this field. So 3 amazing speakers will join me. So first of all, we have Asta Diabate, associate at Capital IT. So her role is to find and support high potential startups within edtech, digital tech, climate tech, and the new social. We also have Ruben Brave, Dutch internet pioneer, board member at the Dutch Startup Association and CEO at Intelligence. He's also a serial entrepreneur in tech, media, and telecommunication. Last but not least, we have Lena Hoffman, Community and Inclusion Director at ASIF Ventures. So Lena promotes diversity and inclusion in tech, entrepreneurship, and finance at ASIF Ventures. So many thanks to the 3 of you for being here today with us. I hope we won't have any technical problems anymore. We wanted to try out a physical event, but maybe after 1 year, the world forgot how it goes. So my first question to the 3 of you is, what is for you the perfect pitch? Let's start here. What do you expect from a startup? Maybe Asta, you can start?
Sure. Oh, there's a bit of a lag, I hope. Okay, cool. I think when it comes to a perfect pitch, there are 2 aspects of it. One is the element of the pitch deck, which is what normally entrepreneurs tend to send to VCs or angels when they're looking for investment. And the other one is the actual first meeting once you get the foot in the door and you're actually talking to the VCs. I guess for me, a pitch deck that is perfect, even though I think perfection is really hard to achieve and I don't think is attainable, is one that really has an element of clarity that is amazing. Like I get to read it and I instantly get the problem that they're solving. One that is accessible in that way. You're able to read it, you get what they're doing, you get where they're going. But there are a bunch of resources out there to help you when it comes to that. There's Sequoia created this pitch deck, a kind of example. So if you go online, you go write Sequoia, writing a business plan, it sort of tells you what is sort of key in things that investors tend to look for, which are, you're telling me the problem that you're solving, the solution, why now, what is the potential of the market, what is your business model, whether you have some traction, meaning you have some customers already, and something about the team. and then there's loads of other things that we can tell about what makes a perfect pitch, but those are the main things. Make sure that you have clarity and that you have the key components of a pitch down in that pitch deck.
Okay.
Yeah, to maybe add a little bit to Asta, I think a mistake that entrepreneurs sometimes make is that they focus very strongly on their product and what they're doing and how they're doing it, but not enough on why they're doing it. And I think the thesis of your company and why you exist is from the perspective of both the investor and the entrepreneur, maybe even the most important thing. I think what we see a lot is that a product can change over time and ideally changes over time. So that's my first tip. I think the second one is really highlighting your team, because I think at the end of the day, investors often invest in people and not even so much in products. So people who are complementary in their skill sets, who have diverse perspectives that they bring to the table, and who are really able to execute, because I think having a great idea is one thing, but actually executing it is a whole different story. And yeah, another maybe good guideline to go about is this idea of like 3 teams. So thesis, team, and then lastly timing. So indeed, like Asta just mentioned, is there a specific opportunity that you see now? Has something changed that you can capitalize on? Do you have access to data that other people cannot access as easily? So I think these are all things to think about when structuring your pitch, and I pass it on to Ruben.
Ruben, we can't hear you. Try to check your microphone. Yeah, maybe in the meanwhile we can keep going, and then Ruben, you can come back to the first question. So on the other side, what are the things to avoid when pitching? Difficult question, maybe.
I guess I can go first, and then Lena or Ruben, if we can hear him. I guess the things to avoid is first and foremost coming unprepared. I think. Oh, cool, Ruben, do go.
Oh.
Yeah, it was just a small setting. My apologies. I think a lot of relevant points are mentioned. Thank you, by the way, Rita, for having us and organizing this event. I also think that don't underestimate the importance of small in-person moments, such as making rapport. Actually, if there is room to be in a physical space, like pouring coffee, catching up in the meeting room, small talk just before you actually come to your business proposal, and try to resist the urge actually to dive directly into the business pitch. And take time for a proper introduction. I think is also relevant. The other thing I also think is relevant, that you should understand that a lot of investors, that they are not entrepreneurs. Maybe some of them, they have been entrepreneurs, but a lot of people are investors actually. They don't speak the language of an entrepreneur. So it's very important to prepare properly before you go to the meeting. So you can look into the website of the investor, what type of investment they've actually made, and also in what phase, entrepreneurial phase, they have invested. Some investors are into the seed stage, some are into the later stage, and it's very important that you, prior to your pitch, you assess the type of risk that these investors are willing to make. I think that it's simple, but also kill your darlings. Keep it simple, keep it clean. Keep graphics clear, and skip anything that is unnecessary. And also, realize that a lot of investors, they get a lot of proposals, and time is definitely something to be respected. So be on time, make sure that you set an agenda, and respect also the end time. And last, of course, listen also to the investor, because they can provide you information that you and perspective that you have not seen before, and that can help you to assess what type of language you need to use with these investors. And also, before I forget, also when you look at the portfolio of the investor, Also see if there is some synergy, possible synergy actually with previous investment that they've made. It's not that you should be like a supplier for the previous investments, but as I said before, it's a risk adventure for the investor also. So if you can help them reduce the risk that they have already made in other ventures, they would like to see you also in your portfolio.
Okay, so thank you very much, the three of you. So Asta and Lena, that gave you some time to think about the second question. So on the other side, what are the things to avoid when pitching?
I think Ruben made amazing points, and I think one of the things that was really clear is the importance of research. Do your research, and I think one of the things that make me the saddest when I receive a pitch is when it's completely unrelated to anything that we do, and we're quite explicit on our website regarding what we look for, or not necessarily the specifics, but we do say these are the areas that we invest in, and we repeatedly get pitches from people who are clearly not doing their research and they're wasting their time. So like sending us like pitches and we can't, like, we're not, it's out of scope for us and we can't look at that. So I definitely would say one that is like an entrepreneur that hasn't done that much research. I'd rather, if you're sort of like, well, I still want to pitch to someone, I'd rather you message me or say, hey, like, I know that this is not your area of expertise, but do you know anyone who is actually doing something in this space so that you can help me and make some introductions and stuff like that. I guess another mistake that people tend to do is that they come to the meetings unprepared. So they come to an they haven't done the necessary practice to get them to having a really solid pitch going on, or they're thrown out when they get a question that they're like, oh my God, like I've never been asked this question before. And as a result, can't think on their feet. So in order to counteract that, I think the best way is to practice. So you have a bunch of entrepreneur friends, try practicing your pitch. Try to think about all the questions that they may be asking you so that you can have an idea of what the answers might be. And I think that goes a long way in making sure that it goes well. And final thing I would say is also do not be too rigid about how the pitch meeting should happen. So for instance, I personally don't like pitch meetings in the traditional sense where an entrepreneur just does slide by slide and it's all about them talking. I'm sort of more interested in having a conversation. So there are entrepreneurs who are not happy with that, but at the end of the day, this is supposed to be a potential business partnership where we're bouncing ideas off each other and where we're asking each other questions and trying to understand where the business could go. So, be flexible enough and in that kind of stuff when you're pitching to an investor and be open to change the style depending on the conversation that you're having.
Okay.
Yeah, I think one thing that is super important as an entrepreneur is that you really know where your strengths and weaknesses lie and what you've already developed within your company, what you already have validation for, where you already have the skill set in-house, and then also where you don't. And of course, I think it can be quite difficult when you're speaking to investors to be, very transparent about all these things without seemingly not being self-confident, not being assertive and showing that you're worth an investment. But I do think it can sometimes help to address these things while then also addressing how you're planning to build up whatever you are still lacking within the next 18 months. Because I think, most companies, and I'm speaking now especially from the perspective of an early stage investor, will not have everything at the table yet. That's not what an investor expects, quite the opposite. We're also often trying to assess if we can bring whatever you need, so to say. So I think that would be a big one for me. And I think the other problem that we see sometimes is if a founder is extremely in love with their product, once again, especially in the early stage, because while you do want someone to be very in love with the problem they're trying to solve, and almost to the point that they will never stop solving it, you don't want someone to think that their product itself is so brilliant that they will not be receptive to feedback and not be able to also pivot as you learn otherwise and your assumptions are invalidated. So those would be my biggest recommendations.
Yeah, I already said some stuff prior to this. Yeah, with the rapport, of course, don't overdo it. Don't use mockery, for instance, to make a connection. That's sometimes dangerous. But also, yeah, show indeed what Lane also said. Show that you're flexible, so that you're willing to learn and that you have pivoted, and that you're not a know-it-all. Because at the end of the day, they have to collaborate with you. And if things need to change, they need to have a sense that, yeah, although you might be knowledgeable, you're also very open to pivot if necessary to, yeah, to protect actually the investment of the investor, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to add something else, and that sort of like resonates with what all of you were saying. I think please don't lie. Like, I think the worst thing that you can do is really lie. And I have one specific instance, and I will forever remember it. And I had this founder who connected with me on LinkedIn, really interesting product, doing really something that we wanted to invest in. And then we sort of ended up realizing that he had lied about VCs having committed to the round. And he also had lied to other people within my team about how we had been long friends and we're just mad. That definitely leaves people with a bad taste in their mouth. And the VC industry is not that big. Like, we all know each other or know someone knows someone else in Europe. So if you do that, you're literally like signing yourself up for being on the blacklist forever. So please, be ambitious. You can have this grand vision, but be honest, and definitely don't lie. Like, don't do it.
Thank you very much for this answer. So we all know that pitching can be difficult, especially if an entrepreneur is just starting. And self-confidence can also be an obstacle for making the perfect pitch, especially for young women that unfortunately tend to have a bit less self-confidence. What are your tips for entrepreneurs that are watching us to have more self-confidence? Who would like to start?
Ladies first, I guess.
And I'll jump in quickly. Yeah, I don't know if I would necessarily agree that, let's say, women on average have less self-confidence. I just think that the way that we display self-confidence might be very different. And if you're in a male-dominated environment where male norms and white norms and other kinds of norms prevail, I think that can lead to a lot of problems. So I think therefore we're often almost kind of forced to assert ourselves and act in a way that might not be our most natural way, and therefore also perform weaker because we're actually kind of trying to move out of shape and it feels very uncomfortable. I do think it's just really important, all the things that we were mentioning before, that you just feel very comfortable with your pitch, your product, what you've been doing, that you just, maybe practice even more than other people would have to. I think that's the sad reality. As long as the systems are how they are, I think women, Black founders with disabilities, etc., probably often have to work a lot harder to get the same amount of funding, for example. Yeah, and I think the other thing is also thinking very closely. Yeah, maybe there are funds that have more diverse managing teams where you have people who are aware of these dynamics, who are educating themselves and their teams on implicit bias. And I think that can also help. I think Capitaite is a really great example of such a fund. So I think nice bridge to Asta.
Yeah, no, I think definitely agree with what you said. Lena, I think another thing that comes to mind really is remember that you know your business better than I do as an investor. I mean, you're living and breathing your business every single day. My understanding of your business might be, I've seen stuff similar and I might have like maybe more of a high level view, but you really understand your business more than I do. And therefore, you should have confidence in that fact. I mean, I say this as someone who's not technical either. So if you're like a technical leader, a CTO of your own company, and you so looked at all the numbers and etc., you know your business. I don't. Like, I'm trying to learn more about it through that call. So use that as a point of strength. And clearly, like, of course, be flexible and be open to think about different ways. But, rest in the fact that you really understand your business the best compared to any other investor, because you're building it day in and day out. And I think that's really what will allow you to be like, well, I'm confident because I know my business. And if practicing and making sure that you cross all your T's and dot all your I's helps you with that, that's great. But really, really sit into this truth. Like, you're the CEO or the CTO of your own business. You know your business better than any investor could ever do.
Yeah, I like what both women said on this panel. Actually, of course, I have no experience of pitching as a female founder, but I do have experience as a black founder, of course. And yeah, to be honest, in the previous days, I was not so conscious actually about all these unconscious biases that a lot of investors had, because I have a long history actually in the tech scene. But what I do realize is that I think what the main thing is, if it concerns people from underrepresented groups, also women are not a minority, but they are underrepresented. I think that it's very important to show people what your story is actually as an entrepreneur, because what the main thing is I see here when it concerns inequality in the ecosystem is that there is a dominant narrative of young white males actually, and I think that not a lot of people are aware of different stories, that also different routes to success or different entrepreneurial journeys can lead to success, and are also safe as an investment. So although you need to pitch from a more cognitive aspect, so having the pitch deck ready, having your figures ready, and all the things that you can digest from a logical perspective, it's also important to show people what your narrative is, what is your journey as a person, as an entrepreneur, and also show them who has helped you on this journey, so that they can see that you're set actually also for success, and also set for a conscious path as an entrepreneur. So telling different stories as an entrepreneur, male, female, black, underrepresented founder, I think this is crucial also to feel confident, and tell people who you are.
Yeah, maybe I can quickly jump on with one last point, because I remember someone recently doing this and I thought it was brilliant. I was speaking to a young woman, and she asked me at the end of the conversation, "Do you have any doubts about me?" And then that forced myself, and also the person who was talking to her with me, to formulate what our doubts were, and she was able to counter them, follow up with an email, linking us to former employees, etc. And I thought that was such a great move, and something that I also want to do in the future. So maybe that's one actionable tip.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. So I just, for our audience, I want to remember that if you have any questions, you can write them in the chat, and we will try to answer to them as much as possible later during the Q&A. So I want to know also, what is your experience with increasing diversity with fundings and investment? If you could share a little bit of your journey in increasing diversity. Who wants to start? It's a very open question with Asta maybe, or Lena.
Sorry, I can go first. I think one of the key things to really increase diversity when it comes to the wonderful world of startups and but also when it comes to investing is really making sure that you have as much of a diverse investment team. I think one of the major reasons why people, and we know that this is the problem, know that women get less funding, Black people get less funding, is because we're not represented at the table when it comes to making those investment decisions. And those unconscious biases sadly creep in and, just give people just more ammunition to say, oh, this funder was interesting, but don't think they're ready, or whatever. The moment that you have more women at the table making those investment decisions, the moment you have more Black people, Asian people, people with disabilities, things start to change. And I think the good thing about my fund is that, yeah, I mean, we're really have focused on that, and we're not saying, oh, we have quotas and we need to make sure that, you know, we get X amount of people that we invest in, but we're sort of like, if we have the right people within our team, we'll be able to find those deals, because we'll be looking at them from a perspective that maybe I won't be able to bring to the table. So I think that's definitely the main thing. Make sure that you hire more Black people and women to be investors. And then on the other side, you know, then the investments will come, and you'll be able to look at investments that you might have not considered in a complete different light.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, because I, of course, work at a fund that doesn't have an explicit diversity and inclusion focus. And I was the first person to ever, I think, really proactively bring that into the fund itself. My role was expanded from the community director to community and inclusion director, because I'd previously worked on a consultancy project with ASIF Ventures, where that was one of the recommendations we had given. And then I transferred from the external consultant role to actually internally implementing changes over the last 8 months. And I think for me, the biggest learning has been that it's so important to build up almost like a tactical skill set that will allow you to take along people who are new to these topics and who have a lot of fear. And that's very hard. I think it takes swallowing your ego, being very patient, and also really understanding from an empathetic perspective where are people coming from. Because of course you have such different starting points. Someone like myself who's very passionate about these topics and reads a lot of philosophy just has a different starting point and different background information than someone else, so to say. And I think that's probably one of the most difficult and key things, to really make sure that when we try to transform organizations, that we take along all key decision makers, because I think otherwise you end up having potentially even more backlash. And I think in my journey, I experienced that myself and made mistakes along the way that I would, probably handle very differently in the future, and just try to be very tactical in how I approach these things. And so that would be my biggest learning of the past 8 months. Let's see how it continues in the next years.
Yeah, since September last year, I was approached by the Ministry of Economic Affairs to investigate actually how we can make the Dutch startup ecosystem much more diverse and inclusive. And there's a lot to be said about it. Indeed, consciousness is very important, but also, actually something I learned maybe in hindsight, what I did as an entrepreneur. Is connecting with people who are different than I am, but who share the same value. So there is actually a sociologist, Mark Granovetter. He actually investigated this, that people focus on what they call their core network actually, and less on the people on the outer rim of their network, who are able to either connect them to totally different networks or to provide them with totally different perspectives. And this is actually a very important theory, because it learns you to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And if everybody is comfortable being uncomfortable, new connections are being made. Also, when you look at the a lot of deals that are actually being made in the VC world, a lot of them are what they call warm leads. So people coming from networks and being introduced to the VC. So if we really want to make the ecosystem more diverse, it's not only enough to focus on ethnicity or gender, but also to steer on value. This theory is called the weak ties theory of Mark Granovetter. And I think it's very important to propel actually from a network perspective, and to be more aware of what is lacking in your core network. This is what I learned along the way, and I see that a lot of clustering of networks, that prevents actually people from stepping in. Of course, there is sexism, there is racism, but there's also exclusion based on less access to social capital, to networks. yeah, these are my learnings till today.
Okay. So I see that we have already one question from Kara. So a question to panelists. Starting today, what is one action that we can each take to help improve diversity in tech tomorrow?
I can start, but I guess I have two. So I'm like, oh, I think the first one is recognize your privilege and use it for good. I mean, those are like the two, I guess, but one. I recognize your privilege. I mean, I could be saying, well, I'm a black person and I'm a woman, and therefore as a result, like I'll never have the same opportunities or whatever. But at the same time, I went to really good schools. I have a really great network. And therefore, my experience is going to be different from someone who comes from a lower social economic background and didn't have the social capital to get to where I am. So was lucky enough that I grew up in a working class family, but had access to middle and upper middle class education. And therefore, for me, the important thing is that I recognize that I'm privileged and my experience might be completely different from someone else's. And thinking and constantly asking myself, what can I do to help others who might not have the same privileges as me, to get them into tech, to get them into roles, to get them in front of investors, to get them in front of angels. So constantly ask yourself, how can I help this other person who doesn't have the same social capital that I have, who doesn't have the same privilege that I have?
Yeah. To add to that, I think on the one hand, it's super important to use your privilege, but I think it's also super important to know when something is not your place, so to say, or when to take a step back and let other people take the microphone. And I think that's something that many of us struggle with because we're on our own little career path and we're all building up ourselves and our networks and so on and so forth. But I think sometimes there are things in human life, and I really believe that go far beyond the individual. And I think given how much technology is shaping all of our collective lives, we do want to make sure that that's technology that benefits all of society, not just certain segments of society. And even though we all want to have a successful career, maybe sometimes it's important to just, give space to people who have been underrepresented and who haven't been able to shape technological development as much as we have, or whoever has in the past. Of course, I can imagine that some people might not find that very intuitive or attractive, but I think it's something that we can all actually gain from in the long run.
I have a small question. What was the question again? I had some distractions here going on.
So here's the question. Starting today, what is one action that we can each take to help improve diversity in tech tomorrow?
I see. Yeah.
Oh, I think we can't hear you.
Oh. What I said before is it's important to learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. When it concerns privilege, I think it's very difficult to imagine how other people perceive privilege. For instance, I was on a panel a few months ago, and they showed how privileged you are based on certain factors. And the more privileged you were, the higher you got onto the pyramid, actually. I kept very low actually at the pyramid, but there was one way that I was able to increase one level, and that was simply because of my name. Because my name is Ruben Brave, and it doesn't seem like a strange Dutch name. And what I learned about that is how difficult it is actually for people who are in a very privileged position to imagine how it is to be unprivileged. So it is very basic, but it's also very powerful, and that is active listening. So really listening what someone is trying to say, and really try to be empathic in how they are demonstrating and how they're showing their story to you. And this is definitely hard work because I see a lot of people who come from a very privileged position who are really doing their best to make it a better world for everybody. But there are experiences that are inalienable. So you cannot transfer these experiences to someone else, such as it's for me very difficult to imagine how it is actually to be a woman. I can sympathize and I can, of course, be empathic, but I am not a woman. And we need to respect these differences in perspective and differences in journey by really listening actively what people are trying to say. And I think that, yeah, if people are starting to really listen and reflect on what persons are telling them, yeah, a lot of mechanisms, maybe unconscious, are going to start up, and are providing room for other people to see other people who they are. And especially in tech, diversity in tech, it's about how do you see yourself as an innovator? Can you see yourself as an innovator? And this is also strongly linked to being comfortable, being confident also in being a tech entrepreneur. But this is definitely strongly tied to it. These are my perspectives till now.
Yeah. So time flies. We already have less than 5 minutes left, but I really want to briefly mention the Fundrite initiative. So Lina, we talked about it. One of its goals by 2023 is to have a diverse mix, including 35% women. So Lina, if you could just briefly introduce this initiative and explain how is it valuable.
Yes. So the founders of the fund that Astana works with, amongst others, basically co-initiated Fundrite, which is a commitment by, I think, 45 VC funds until now who have committed to this goal of 35% in their portfolio and managing teams, etc. I think rightly so, it's been criticized for being window dressing, because I think there are a lot of funds who aren't really taking action. And sadly, we also saw in this year's Fundrite report that the data hasn't necessarily been improving, even though the initiative has been there for a year, or if so, very slightly. And I think another issue that exists with Fundrite as well, in my personal perspective, is that it's very focused on gender, always with the argument that it's very hard to track other kinds of diversity. But I think also because there's maybe the false premise that if we get gender right, other kinds of intersections will just magically fall into place. And I think, sadly, none of this is true. At the same time, I think working at a VC firm now, I see how hard it is to even get the space moving. So I think it's definitely a step into the right direction. And I think what's really great is that Fundrite is trying to build up a community and a lot of different resources that make it easier for VCs to be diverse and inclusive. And I think kind of by creating these low-hanging fruits, it is a valuable initiative. I would just really like for it to be more ambitious and more bold and radical. But once again, working in a VC firm, I'm often put off as an activist who maybe shouldn't even be there. So I understand the dilemma that's there. But curious to see what other members of the panel think of Fundrite.
Yeah, when it concerns Fundrite, I totally agree with you, Lena, is that the focus on one type of diversity, like gender, can be very limiting, of course. If you want to fund right, you need to fund from the perspective of diversity is adding a lot to innovation, and innovation can propel and help also sustainable growth. And actually, I believe that the World Economic Forum and McKinsey, they saw that they did some investigations and some research, and it seems that companies who are diverse are at least 90% more profitable and are outlier. And when you look at diversity from other perspectives than gender, this percent is even higher. So if you are really funding right, and you're funding from the perspective of innovation and sustainable economic growth, you should embrace diversity in the broader sense of the word. Not only from the what they call the political correct or social desirable perspective of funding right, but also from a financial economic perspective. Acknowledge that diversity is an asset and not a burden for a company, and that it really propels innovation and economic growth. So I hope that these lessons from international organizations such as McKinsey and the World Economic Forum and the Boston Consulting Group also, by the way, are being adopted by the initiators of the Fundright initiative.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I could say one quick thing. And I think for me, any initiative that is trying to move the needle and make the world a better place, not only because, it's the right thing to do, just as Ruben was saying, but because it's the economically speaking, it's also the right thing to do, is absolutely amazing. I think there's plenty of work that all of us still need to do to make sure that the tech industry is diverse and as a result unlocks even more value and opportunity, economically speaking. I'm generally excited, though, because I know that there are plenty of people who are not looking at startups that are being funded by people who are diverse, who, if just given the chance, have immense potential to really do well, make people's lives better, and also, make a significant amount of returns for investors. So I'm so of the view that, there are investors who won't be doing that, and that's fine. As long as there are some who are doing it and doing it really well, we'll start moving the conversation forward. Because I think for some people, the only thing that will make them reconsider this is if they actually see the number and they see the lost opportunities. So I'm excited for the future because I know that we're one step closer to see that happen.
Thank you so much. So we didn't have the time to answer to all the questions, of course, but I'm sure you can connect to our speakers if you have any specific questions, and to the high tech tea and women in tech as well. So to conclude this panel, I wanted to share one sentence that Ruben, you told me when we previously talked. So that you're convinced that social diversity and social inclusion increases innovation and lead to a more sustainable growth. So I thought that was the perfect summary to end this panel. And thank you again to the three of you and to our audience to still be here on a Friday afternoon. So thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
A nice way to round off the week. Bye bye.
Indeed. Bye.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the studio. My name is Raisa Ghazi, and I have listened to panel 2 just now, and I'm really impressed with what I've heard. Well, I hope you've also had some good takeaways from this session, and feel free to share them in the chat. Right now, I have one more guest in the studio who will explain a little bit about who she is and also about her announcement for her region, where she is a chairwoman. Someone very inspiring to me, a role model of a woman. I hope you all have such women in your lives. And maybe she can be that for you as well. Tanya, the floor is yours.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you so much. Well, my name is Tanya. You already said that. And I'm really happy and I have a lot of enthusiasm now, feeling really great after such wonderful pitches by all these great women and some men, of course. I heard some tips on perfect pitches. I heard some tips on how to be an entrepreneur in technology. And actually, as a chairperson here in Amsterdam Southeast, we have 170 different nationalities and we have cultures and a lot of young people. And I was just thinking how wonderful it would be if these young people could just also be part of this technology family. I think that, I see like a moonshot, and my moonshot would be that all of our kids in Amsterdam Southeast would all learn coding. They would all think about a career in technology because, as already has been said in all these conversations, a lot of my kids in Amsterdam Southeast, they don't have these privileges. They don't know what kind of options there are in a society. And I think that what you all shared, all your knowledge, all the richness in your knowledge, which you shared, should be heard by all of my kids. So if speakers or some of the people who are connected in the Zoom session, please do find us in Amsterdam Southeast and, just collaborate with us, because I think that Amsterdam Southeast should be the place to be in the digital world. And I think it's possible. I heard a lot of tips why it should be possible. So please connect with us in Amsterdam Southeast. So that's, for me, Raisa, is my announcement, is that I've heard some really wonderful stories. I've just concentrated on the talks, and I was just, really delighted to be part of it and to just reach out to all of you guys listening to this beautiful event and asking you for help, because I already, all the women in the speeches, they pointed out that it's the soft power in technology which we need now, and I think that soft power is in Amsterdam Southeast. So these are two S's, soft power in Southeast. So join us and let us be part of this great startup, like the Prince Constantijn of Oranje already pointed out, that all the challenges we face nowadays and also after COVID, all these challenges, actually they can be captured by moving in there and using technology as a great asset. So thanks again for the opportunity. I think that I should now close up my announcement and just ask you guys, help me with my moonshot. So thank you again. This was Tanya Jatnalan Singh for this event.
Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the High Tech Tea. Then, to end this event, I have one last announcement for you guys. Women in Tech is organizing on the 26th and 27th of May the Women in Tech 24-hour virtual world tour. There will be 150 speakers, from which there are international leaders and role models. So if you don't want to miss out on these unique opportunities, don't forget to register. Then I'll give the word to Rita for now. Raisa, I'm sorry.
Right? That's okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Like Anjana mentioned, we are really happy that you were here viewing our event. And also our speakers, thank you so much for being present and making this event what it is. Very insightful, inspiring, and very informative. Also, special thanks to Mr. Constantijn van Oranje for giving us a really nice interview on his view on women in technology. But also Tanya Jatnalan Singh, who sent us a very special message about her wishes for the region of Zuidoost, and also sharing what she's learned from our event. Well, I would like to say thank you all again for being here. I hope you got a lot of energy and inspiration from this event, and that it will inspire you to do something new, maybe start a new business, who knows. I would like to make you aware that there's going to be a new High Tech Tea soon in collaboration with the Women in AI. Eve mentioned it before, and it will be on the 22nd of June. Make sure to be there. We'll start sending emails out as soon as possible as well. And in the meantime, keep following us both, Women in Tech, but also the High Tech Tea on social media. I've had a really, really nice event with the Women in Tech. Thank you so much for wanting to be my partner this time. And I hope to see you all soon.